All right, let's talk about the weather in the UK because it is absolutely wild right now. We're looking at a country that is completely waterlogged from relentless rain, facing serious flooding, and it's about to do a complete 180 into a full-blown Arctic blast. It is a serious case of weather whiplash, so let's get right into it. So here's what we're going to cover. First, we'll look at why the UK is at a saturation point. Then the science behind this crazy atmospheric battle happening overhead. We'll zero in on Tuesday's biggest flood risks, and then chart the massive pattern change from rain to a major wintry threat. And most importantly, we'll wrap up with a straightforward two-part safety plan to get you through all of it. Okay, first things first, we have to talk about the immediate crisis. The big problem right now isn't just that it's raining, it's that the ground is completely, and I mean utterly, full. And this number? Well, it just says it all, doesn't it? As of Tuesday, we're looking at 107 active flood warnings across England alone. Now, you need to know, a flood warning isn't a maybe. It means flooding is expected. It means you need to take action right now. This is a very serious situation for a lot of communities. This right here is the core of the issue: saturation. The best way to think about it is to imagine the ground is just a giant sponge. And after weeks of rain, some spots have seen over 40 straight days of the stuff. That sponge is totally full. It literally cannot absorb one more drop. So any new rain, even if it's not that much, has nowhere to go. It just runs straight into rivers and onto roads, which is why the flood risk is so incredibly high. So the big question is, why has it been so wet for so long? Well, the answer is pretty incredible. There's a massive atmospheric battle playing out directly over the UK. And the key player in this fight is something we call a blocking pattern. What's happening is that a huge, really stubborn area of high pressure has basically just parked itself over Scandinavia. It's acting like a giant wall in the atmosphere. This kind of thing can happen when the jet stream gets weak and wavy, allowing these patterns to get locked in place for days, sometimes even weeks. And the result? All that wet weather from the Atlantic gets forced to just stall out, right on top of the British Isles. This gives you a great visual of the two fighters in the ring. Coming in from the southwest, you've got these low-pressure systems. They're constantly feeding in mild, really moist air from the ocean, and that's the source of all our rain. But then, from the northeast, you have that monster Scandinavian high, holding back this huge mass of cold, heavy air. The UK is literally trapped right in the middle, getting squeezed by both of them. Okay, so now that we get the science, let's zoom in on the immediate danger. Let's talk about where all that stalled rain is causing the biggest problems right now, on Tuesday. We've got 3 key zones under official yellow weather warnings. Up in eastern Scotland, around Aberdeen, the problem is just the sheer volume of persistent heavy rain. For South Wales, the big concern is what we call river response. Because the ground is so saturated, all that new rain is just pouring directly into the rivers, causing them to swell up really, really fast. And then down in southern England, it's more about surface water and groundwater flooding. That's when the drainage systems are overwhelmed and the water table itself is so high that you get flooding even if you're not near a river. So what does a yellow warning actually mean for your day? Well, it means real-world problems. You should expect a lot of spray and flooding on the roads, which makes driving really hazardous. Definitely plan for longer journey times, whether you're in a car or on a bus or train. And you have to be aware there is a small but very real chance that some communities could get temporarily cut off by those flooded roads. Right, but here is where the entire story takes a massive plot twist. That huge atmospheric battle we've been talking about? It's about to end. There's a clear winner emerging, and it is going to completely transform the UK's weather by the end of this week. Just look at this timeline. It's incredible. We go from our current situation on Wednesday, wet and mild in the south, to a really noticeable cooling on Thursday. But Friday is when the big change happens. We get a full-on Arctic incursion. And by the weekend, we're in a completely different world. We're talking widespread cold, wintry showers, hard frosts, and lots of ice. So how does this flip happen so fast? Well, the key is that those low-pressure systems, the ones bringing the rain, they finally give up trying to push north. They get shoved south, towards France, and that opens the door. It allows that big Scandinavian high, our blocking high, to finally win the battle and just drag this huge mass of bitterly cold Arctic air right down across the entire country. So this brings us to the next really critical phase of this whole event. The UK is still soaking wet from weeks of rain, and now we're about to plunge it into a deep freeze. What on earth does that mean for the weekend? Let's just ask the most important question right now. We're going to have cold Arctic air locked in place. But we still have moisture hanging around in the atmosphere and more coming in from the Atlantic. So, what happens when those two ingredients meet over a country that is already completely waterlogged? You get snow, and I'm not talking about just a few pretty flakes. Forecasters are seriously highlighting a significant risk of a major snow event this weekend, especially on Saturday. There's even talk of a potential Valentine's Day blizzard scenario as a new weather front carrying moisture slams into that established cold air. We could see snow sweeping across huge parts of the country. And this cold is going to be the real deal. By Sunday, temperatures could plummet as low as -5 Celsius in some rural spots. Now, this is where things get especially dangerous. When that saturated ground freezes solid, it becomes like concrete. That means any standing water turns into widespread ice hazards. But it also means that when the thaw eventually comes, the frozen ground can't absorb any of the melting snow or any new rain, which could create the potential for a second round of flash flooding. It's a double whammy. So let's recap. We have two completely different, very high-impact weather events, all packed into a single week. This absolutely requires a two-part safety plan, one for the flood risk we have right now and one for the winter risk that is just around the corner. Okay, here's what you need to do. It's simple. Part 1, for right now, focus entirely on flood safety. The number one rule, the most important thing, is never, ever drive or walk through floodwater. Seriously, it only takes about 30 centimeters of moving water to float a car. It is not worth the risk. Then, part 2, for later this week, you need to switch gears to winter prep. Get your vehicle ready for ice and snow. Expect and plan for travel disruption. And please, please check in on any vulnerable neighbors who might really struggle with this sudden, severe cold. And really, that's what this all comes down to. The UK is navigating a rare and pretty dangerous combination of hazards. A country that is at its saturation point is about to be plunged into a deep freeze. The key to staying safe is to respect the risk we're facing today, while you actively get ready for the completely different risk that's coming this weekend.